sports unites family. That's a perfect excuse to get together with your family, to watch a game, to talk about sports. So what it does to people, I think that's my favorite part.
You have seen her covering the world's largest sporting events for Telemundo Deportes. Now she's entertaining audiences by presenting soccer's biggest storylines leading up to the FIFA World Cup 26. Her name is Vero Rodríguez, and she's one of the many women behind the football. In the Women Behind the Football, we're introducing you to the women with the coolest jobs helping shape the 2026 FIFA World Cup. But we don't want to just do a standard interview, so we want to treat it like a soccer game. Welcome to the kickoff, where we start with rapid-fire questions to get things going. Vero, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. My first question for you is, do we say soccer or football?
Thank you for having me, first of all. I'm so excited to be here. And I would say, I have no doubts, it's football.
Perfect. What is your favorite World Cup memory?
Oh, I will have to go to my first World Cup coverage back in Brazil, 2014. And to perceive how they live football, it was amazing. You know, when you're in a coverage, you have to move from one place to the other, so you can't watch all the games. So when I was moving on the street, I could hear the game as if I was looking at it. Like every store, every restaurant, every house was watching the game. So it was like one voice of the city in Rio de Janeiro. Like I was walking and it was one voice just hearing the passion of football. I think that's my favorite memory.
What is actually the best part of your job, since we're talking about it?
The best part of my job, I think, sharing the emotion of people about sports. You know, when sometimes it's been years that your team hasn't won, and then it finally wins after 40, 50 years, and to see what it means in people's eye and what it means for people's even family. You know, like sports unites family. You're a Latina, you're from Honduras. You will know perfectly that that's a perfect excuse to get together with your family, to watch a game, to talk about sports. So what it does to people, I think that's my favorite part.
Vero, now it's time to get to know you a little bit better. So you have told us a bit about your job, and we'll dig into that a little bit more in the second half. But first, I want to learn more about your upbringing. I know you were born in Mexico City to be exact. So
yes.
3 words that you will use to describe your childhood.
I would say family, I would say joy, and I would say sports.
You're married, you mentioned your husband, and he's a WWE star, Finn Balor. What is it like watching soccer matches with your husband?
Oh, it's lovely because he's such a football fan. When we're watching Liga MX, that is a Mexican league, there's no problem because we both cheer for the same team, that is Pumas, arriba los Pumas. But when we're watching, for example, Premier League, we're enemies. We're big rivals. He's a fan of Tottenham and I'm a fan of Arsenal. So we kind of make bets, which most of the time I win. So we always bet like, oh, I want the new jersey of Arsenal or Tottenham. And I have to tell you, from now, I haven't had to pay anything yet.
Okay, now it's time for halftime, where we take a little break and tell you about the World Cup by the numbers.
World Cup by the numbers. When did your favorite national last win the FIFA World Cup? Argentina is the defending champion from 2022. France won in 2018 in Russia. Germany lifted the trophy for the 4th time in 2014. Spain won its first ever title in 2010. Before that, Italy won its 4th title in 2006, and Brazil won its record 5th title in 2002. Uruguay? They won way back in 1950. What about the 3 North American countries who are combining to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup? Canada, Mexico, and the United States are all competing for their first World Cup title on home soil.
So in the second half, I want to drill down on what exactly it is your job entails. Your show, El Pelotazo, does a great job blending sports and entertainment. So how do you bring sports and entertainment together?
You know, I have the idea that sports in nature are actually already entertainment. So we like to share that, and we do it in a very light way because the show it's at midnight. So by that time you get to your house, you want to relax, you want to share your passion. So it's just like talking to the girl next door about the things that you like the most. So I think that's like the best formula, and we're doing great, which I really appreciate. And I think it's a perfect way to build up for the FIFA World Cup on 2026.
The FIFA World Cup is the most watched sporting event globally. What are the opportunities and challenges of covering such a massive event?
The opportunity is like being in the biggest event with the biggest of passions, with the biggest of history. And the challenge, I think, a World Cup, it's a little bit more than a month. Obviously, now more that it's going to be 48 teams. And it's a lot to keep the energy up with all the news, the football players, the games for 40 days in a row. It's a lot. But at the same time, you know, the people is so passionate. And in this World Cup, I know that it's going to be like in Mexico, it's coming back to the US, in Canada. The Hispanic passion, I think that's going to help us to keep the energy up for the whole World Cup.
We're going to have a tormenta all over, a storm all over from Canada to Mexico with energy, a good storm. Who has been your favorite soccer player so far that you interview, and why?
In an interview, I would have to say Jorge Campos, the goalkeeper. First of all, he's like a legend in Pumas, which I love, but also he's a legend in the national team in Mexico. And I think he has a lot of wisdom to share. He looks at football in a very unique way. Also, he made the experiment to leave Mexico and come to the MLS, which was like very new for those times. And I think he's very fun. He has a lot of wisdom, and he's very personable. So I think it's been one of the best interviews for sure.
And what have been the challenge, one of the challenges that you have experienced as a woman in sports media? Because we know it was not easy at the beginning.
At least in Mexico, when I started, I've been in the US only for 3 years, but I did all my career in Mexico. It was kind of a process for people to understand that women, that we belong in sports journalism, as athletes, that we have a place in there. So I think that process and receiving like, you don't belong in this place, why is a woman talking about sports? I think that was the hard part. But at the same time, I feel so proud that today we look back at it. Like it's not like that anymore, and we're opening spaces. As the first women did open space for us, we're still doing it, and I love that part of my job.
Vero, tell us about your work with this nonprofit organization called Versus, which is combating gender, racial, and class discrimination in sports journalism.
When I started, and as I told you, it was such a process, and we were receiving a lot of violence in social media. And then I talked to Marion Reimers, great activist, feminist, and sports journalist. And we said, like, this can't be right. We just can't sit down and just receive all this and do nothing about it. So we made this association and this to raise our voice against the violence we were receiving. We made such weird experiments where actually went like heartbreaking, you know? Like we would put the same tweet about any team, and the male journalists joined. And the response from the audience, it was so different for a woman sports journalist to the male ones. So we kind of raised our voices, and it made a lot of noise in the beginning, but actually so many women like felt identified, and we made such a strong association. Marion has gone too far. She has been like even opening laws in Mexico about gender violence in social media, which I think it's amazing. And since then, I think the noise had getting down. Like I don't receive as much like negative messages. We've changed a lot. The environment for sports journalism in females. And now I think it's getting better. There's still a long way to come, but I think things are getting better. But it's important for us to say that whenever it's violence, we have to raise our hand, we have to raise our voice and say, this is not correct.
And talking in the context of television, it's a visual medium. How have you dealt with trolls who have commented on your appearance? Because that must be difficult too. How do you handle that?
In the beginning, it was kind of hard because I was wondering things that I've never wondered before, like, oh, what's wrong with my hair? What's wrong with my body? What's like, it will get me. Anyone that says like, oh, I just don't listen, I think that's not true. Like your brain absorbs and receives all that violence. You can't discard it, but you have to actually know yourself very good, know your value, understand that it's not personal, understand that they're just like making a comment and just go to the next person and say something similar. So that's why actually we made Versus, like to raise our voice. And it's not okay to raise some awareness, because it's never okay. You never know what that person is going through, you know? And it could get much further than just a comment to say, oh, I don't like, for me, it's like, you're too flat-chested to be on TV. It's like, hey, there is like, we're all different, and that is okay. And I think that's important. That's a very good message.
Thank you for that service, because it's really hard to create a balance between your work and nonprofit intervention. So thank you very much, Vero, for that. And what are you most excited about covering a World Cup now, if we think about it, in North America?
The fact that it's coming back to Mexico, it's one of the things that gets me most excited. I've never lived a World Cup in Mexico. I was born in '83. The last World Cup was in '86. So I was 3 years old. I don't remember, but I do remember my dad talking about like how he went to the stadium, where they went to celebrate. And I always wonder, like, wow, that must have been amazing. Ooh, I wonder when it will happen again. Well, now we have it back home, so I'm very excited.
Well, Vero, before you go, now we want to have some overtime questions and do a little recap of your life. Which woman in your life has given you the biggest support or assistance?
My mom, by far. I have no doubt. My mom, she's always been there. I think it's the woman that I admire the most.
And since we're talking about in the context of sports, especially this one, soccer or football, like you explained already, what was the biggest red card experience of your career?
Oh, there are some times that because you want to cover everything, I want to do this and the other. And I think if I ever made a mistake, which I've made a lot, but not prepare 100%, and I think the audience deserves your preparation 100%. So even if you can't cover it all, prepare yourself and 100% so you can deliver in a good way for them. They deserve it.
And in the same line, what has been the biggest goal, the biggest success you have scored?
Putting my fear aside of being on camera or being exposed, because it doesn't seem like, but I'm actually very shy and I'm an introvert. So sometimes it's hard. When I start talking about football, I forget and everything's okay. But you know, when you say, and you understand me perfectly, like, hello, and this will have, like all that, it gets me shy. So to put my fear aside every day, I think that's my biggest goal.
Vero, thank you very much for joining us today. We can't wait to see your coverage of 2026 World Cup.
Thank you for everything. This was a great interview. We have to bet sometimes Mexico, Honduras.
It's a bet.
Okay.
It's a deal.
It's a deal.
Thank you, Vero. And make sure to watch all the action on Telemundo, your Spanish language home of the World Cup.